Okay, and then the next strategies are a little bit more for specific skills, like academic skills. So if you want to teach just, let's say a child how to solve a math problem, or perhaps you want to teach a child how to, identify specific items in a map, let's say, there's a strategy of just breaking down the task into smaller steps, and that we call it task analysis and chaining. So what that means is, if you have a whole task, that may be a little bit too much to grasp, you want to break it down into smallest steps, and then those smaller steps you want to teach them one by one, and then you're kind of going to group them together. So perhaps you start with the first step of the task, and then you go to the next step after they got down the first one, or you can do it backwards depending on how they respond. So teaching things like, this can be used for anything, but just some examples can be, for example, teaching a child how to tie their shoelaces, or perhaps, like this visual that we have in here, how to get ready for school, or how to come back home after.
Because there's a lot of different details involved in that, and you can get kind of like the deer in the headlights look, when you tell your child to do things like that when they can't mentally break it down.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of the task analysis, I put a visual in there, and sometimes it's good to use those visuals that you can prompt the child to go through each step, like, brushing their teeth, and they may want to have each step of the task. Right. But sometimes you don't need a visual, and you can just guide the child, physically to through each step, and then make sure that you're fading yourself back after they're becoming a little bit more independent.
Right. Yep. And so chaining basically is then when they learn each of the individual steps, eventually you want them to be able to progress through that at like a link, link together.
Exactly. So for example, let's say that, we'll just take this task analysis, right? It's, I think this task analysis was intended for coming back home from school, or, finishing schoolwork. So what are the steps that you need to do after that? You hang up your backpack, you take off your coat, you hang it up, you take out your folder. So how you want to start teaching it is, perhaps you want to start teaching the first step. So you will guide the child physically to hang up the backpack, and then you will focus on only teaching him that step, and then you will help him do the rest. But once he has the first step down, and he's able to do that consistently, independently, then you add another step. So now I'm going to require that you hang up your backpack and that you take off your coat. And then you're kind of moving progressively throughout the task. Some other tasks may need to be doing backwards depending on what's easier for the child. So you may just teach the first step, the last step on the chain, and then you help him through the first steps, and then you kind of work your way backwards. So it's just different ways, but basically it's kind of like breaking it down, and then you're going to break down the task in the amount of steps that your child needs. So some kids need, taking the one side off first and the other first, and then some kids just need to take it off at once.
And just make sure it gets on the hook instead of on the floor.
Yes, that is important. Yes.